When a devoted Filipino father and his young daughter vanished on what was meant to be a peaceful weekend sail, the world believed it was a tragic accident at sea. But 12 years later, his grieving wife uncovered a hidden photograph, one that exposed a secret affair, a fake death, and a chilling murder buried beneath the waves. The weekend began like any other on the quiet shores of Cebu. The sky was streaked with orange as the sun rose over the sea, glinting off the calm waves. Ramon de la Cruz, a respected mechanical engineer and proud father, moved about his small sailboat with practiced precision. Every knot was tied, every sail checked twice. This trip was a special one, meant to give him and his 9-year-old daughter, Isabella, time together away from the noise of city life. Clara, his wife, stood on the dock, her white dress fluttering in the breeze as she watched them prepare. Isabella laughed as she climbed aboard, clutching her stuffed dolphin and a bag full of her favorite snacks. To Clara, they looked picture-perfect, a father and daughter bound by adventure and love. Ramon promised to return by Sunday evening, just before sunset. He kissed Clara on the cheek and started the engine, steering the boat into the open sea. Neighbors waved, watching as the boat shrank into the distance, its white sail gleaming like a ghost against the blue horizon. Hours passed, and the calm ocean remained still. By nightfall, Clara stood alone by the dock, waiting for the light of their boat to reappear. The next morning, the sun rose again, but the sea was empty. Clara's worry turned into dread as evening fell with no sign of Ramon or Isabella. When she finally called the Coast Guard, search teams swept the coastline, finding nothing, no wreckage, no distress call, not even a piece of floating debris. By the third day, hope began to fade, and whispers spread through the community. Some said a storm might have pulled them under. Others claimed they had sailed too far. But deep down, Clara felt something was terribly wrong. The news of Ramon and Isabella's disappearance spread rapidly across Cebu, filling headlines and radio broadcasts. Volunteers gathered along the shore, scanning the horizon for any sign of the missing sailboat. Helicopters hovered over the turquoise waters, and rescue boats crisscrossed the area for days. Despite the massive effort, nothing surfaced. No life jackets, no pieces of the hull, no clue of what had gone wrong. Authorities concluded that it must have been a tragic maritime accident, perhaps caused by sudden strong currents or a hidden reef. But to Clara, that explanation felt hollow. Ramon was an expert sailor who had navigated those waters for years. He always carried emergency gear, kept weather radios tuned, and followed safety protocols without fail. The official report listed the case as lost at sea, and the file was quietly closed. Clara refused to accept it. Each night, she sat by the window overlooking the ocean, staring into the dark waves, hoping to spot the flicker of a light or the sound of a familiar voice. Weeks turned into months, and sympathy from friends faded. People told her to move on, to rebuild her life. But Clara couldn't. She sold her jewelry to fund private searches, hiring divers and fishermen to explore remote islands. Every tip led to disappointment. Some claimed to have seen a drifting boat. Others swore they heard a child crying at sea. None of it led anywhere. A year later, a memorial service was held, though no bodies had been found. Clara attended in silence, unable to speak the word goodbye. To everyone else, it was over. But in her heart, she felt a quiet pulse of truth. Her husband and daughter were not gone. Something had happened out there, something that no one wanted to see. 12 long years had passed since the day Ramon and Isabella vanished. Clara's once lively home had turned into a quiet museum of memories, each corner filled with photographs and the faint scent of sea salt that never seemed to leave. She had aged visibly, her eyes dulled by years of sleepless nights and unanswered prayers. Life had moved on around her, but her heart remained anchored in the past. On the 12th anniversary of their disappearance, Clara finally decided it was time to sell the house. She spent days sorting through boxes in the attic, sifting through old clothes, toys, and mementos from happier days. In one dusty corner, she found an old waterproof bag tucked inside a crate of Ramon's sailing gear. Inside was a camera she didn't recognize, an older model, slightly rusted from years of humidity. Curious, she charged it and turned it on. The memory card contained dozens of photos from family trips, birthdays, and their sailing adventures. Her heart softened as she scrolled through the images, until one picture stopped her cold. It was taken on the deck of Ramon's sailboat. He stood smiling, but beside him was a woman Clara had never seen before. She wasn't a relative, nor a family friend. The woman looked confident, almost intimate with Ramon, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Clara's stomach twisted. The date stamp on the photo was just 2 weeks before the disappearance. She stared at it for hours, unable to make sense of what she was seeing. Why would Ramon take another woman on their family sailboat, and so close to the day he and Isabella vanished? For the first time in years, Clara felt something stronger than grief, an unease that whispered there was more to the story than anyone had ever known. Clara printed the mysterious photo and studied every detail under the dim light of her kitchen. The woman beside Ramon had sharp features, dark wavy hair, and a small pendant glinting against her chest. When Clara zoomed in, she noticed the engraving on the pendant, 2 simple letters. "EM," they meant nothing to her, yet they felt hauntingly significant. Why had Ramon hidden this? Why had he never mentioned this woman? Clara searched through their old files and personal documents, hoping to find a clue. There was no mention of anyone with those initials. Days turned into restless nights as she scoured social media, news archives, and missing persons databases. Then, one article caught her attention, a report about a travel photographer named Elena Morales who disappeared a year before Ramon and Isabella. The details sent a chill down her spine. Elena was last seen in the same region Ramon often sailed through. She had vanished during a solo photography trip, her last post tagged near a cove Ramon loved visiting. Clara compared the photo to images of Elena online. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same pendant, the same confident smile. A cold realization began to take shape. Ramon had known Elena. He had been with her before the disappearance. Clara's grief turned to disbelief, then anger. All these years, she had mourned a devoted husband, not a man who might have been hiding a secret affair. But another thought soon followed. If Elena had gone missing a year before, what did that mean for Ramon? Could their disappearances be connected? And if so, how deep did this connection go? The photograph, once an innocent memory, had become a crack in the carefully constructed story of tragedy. Beneath it, Clara sensed something dark was waiting to be uncovered. Clara knew she couldn't face the truth alone. The local police had dismissed her earlier calls for help, claiming there was no new evidence to reopen the case. Determined, she contacted Miguel Santos, a retired detective once known for solving cold cases across Cebu. Miguel listened quietly as she showed him the photograph and explained what she had discovered about Elena Morales. His experience told him that coincidences like this rarely existed. He agreed to help her, beginning with a fresh look at every piece of evidence. When Miguel enlarged the photograph, he noticed something Clara had missed, a faint outline in the water behind Ramon and Elena. It wasn't a shadow, it was another boat, partially obscured by distance. Using image enhancement software, he uncovered a barely visible registration number painted along the hull. Clara's heart raced as Miguel traced the number through maritime records. It led to a luxury charter company that rented private yachts under various names, one of which matched Elena Morales. That discovery connected Ramon directly to Elena in a way no one could deny. Miguel dug deeper and found that the yacht had been rented 2 weeks before Ramon's supposed family trip. The date matched perfectly with the photo's timestamp. It meant Ramon and Elena had sailed together before he vanished with Isabella. Clara struggled to breathe as the implications sank in. Was Ramon planning something long before that final voyage? If he had been with Elena, why did both of them disappear? And where did Isabella fit into this tangled secret? Miguel believed the sailboat they left on might have been part of a larger plan. The disappearance no longer looked like an accident. It began to resemble a carefully orchestrated escape that had gone terribly, fatally wrong. Miguel's investigation led him to re-examine reports from coastal patrols and fishermen who had claimed to see unusual activity around the time of Ramon's disappearance. One name stood out, a fisherman from Bohol who said he saw a small sailboat anchored near an uninhabited island hours before the Coast Guard search began. The location matched Ramon's usual sailing route. Clara and Miguel took a ferry and then hired a local guide to reach the island. Overgrown with thick vegetation and scattered coral, it looked untouched by humans for years. As they explored, Miguel spotted remnants of a campfire, rusted cans, and fragments of fabric half buried in the sand. Clara's breath caught when she saw something glinting near a pile of driftwood, a corroded wristwatch. Wiping away the dirt, she froze. The back was engraved with 3 small letters, RDC, Ramon de la Cruz. Tears welled in her eyes as Miguel documented the scene. Nearby, they found fragments of a sailboat's hull washed inland and tangled among the rocks. The serial number matched the registration of Ramon's missing vessel. Forensic testing later confirmed the wood had been submerged for years before surfacing again. Yet despite the wreckage, there were no remains, no signs of life or struggle. To Miguel, the evidence felt staged, as if someone had deliberately planted clues to mislead investigators. He noted that the watch appeared polished recently, not eroded naturally by the sea. That small detail raised chilling questions. Who had placed it there, and why? Clara's faint hope that her family might have survived flickered, caught between despair and confusion. Miguel believed the island held only part of the story. Somewhere beyond it, he was certain, lay the truth about what really happened the day Ramon and Isabella vanished from the sea. The discoveries on the island only deepened the mystery. Miguel began tracing Ramon's financial history, searching for patterns or unusual activity in the months before the disappearance. What he found shocked Clara. A week before the sailing trip, Ramon had withdrawn a large sum of money from their joint account, nearly all their savings. At the same time, he had quietly sold a small piece of inherited property in his hometown without telling her. The sale had been processed through a third party, leaving little paper trail. When Miguel followed the money, it led to a bank account under another name, Elena Morales. Clara's stomach twisted with disbelief. Ramon had not only hidden his relationship with Elena, but he had also funneled money to her. The picture of her loving husband began to shatter, piece by piece. Miguel suspected Ramon and Elena had been planning to leave the country together, using the sailboat as their escape route. But there was something that didn't fit. Why take Isabella along? Miguel theorized that bringing his daughter made the trip appear like a family outing, ensuring no one would question it. But if that was the case, what went wrong? Then came the most startling twist. Months after the supposed accident, bank records showed that Elena's account had been accessed again, this time in Indonesia. The withdrawal occurred several times over a span of weeks, long after both Ramon and Elena were declared missing. Someone had her card, and someone knew her passwords. Miguel presented the evidence to Clara, his voice heavy with concern. It was now clear that Ramon had survived. But whether Isabella was still alive, and what had become of Elena, remained a question no one was prepared to answer. The ocean had hidden its secrets well, but not forever. Clara and Miguel flew to Indonesia with the help of local authorities who had reopened old harbor records. They focused on a small coastal town near Sulawesi, where one of the mysterious withdrawals from Elena's account had been made. The town was quiet, its docks filled with aging fishing boats and weathered sailors who remembered faces better than names. After several days of inquiries, they met a retired harbor officer named Surya, who recalled a Filipino man and a young girl arriving by yacht around 12 years ago. He described the man as anxious, constantly glancing over his shoulder, while the girl seemed frightened and cried often. Surya said the man registered under the name Ramon Cruz, and his female companion was listed as Elena Morales. But when Miguel showed him a photograph of the real Elena, Surya shook his head. The woman he saw was younger, possibly in her early 20s, and spoke very little. This revelation changed everything. If the real Elena was already dead, then who was the woman pretending to be her? Clara's mind raced with possibilities. Could Ramon have forced someone else to assume Elena's identity to continue his plan? Or was he covering up something far more sinister? Miguel suspected the latter. Surya remembered that after a few weeks, the man sold the yacht and left town abruptly, heading toward a remote island chain further south. No official records were filed after that. The lead reignited Clara's determination. She had spent years searching for closure, and now the trail was warm again. Somewhere in Indonesia, the man she had once loved was still alive, hiding behind a new name. What she didn't yet know was that the truth, when found, would be far more devastating than anything she could imagine. Miguel continued his search through Indonesian records and eventually uncovered old surveillance footage from a small harbor near where Surya had last seen Ramon. The footage, though grainy, revealed crucial evidence. It showed Ramon and Isabella stepping off a yacht at dusk, both carrying small bags. Hours later, the same camera captured Ramon returning to the pier, but this time, he was not with Isabella. Instead, a woman wearing a scarf and sunglasses walked beside him. Her posture seemed hesitant, almost uncomfortable, but she followed closely as they disappeared into the night. Clara's pulse raced as Miguel replayed the footage again and again. Who was the woman? Forensic experts analyzed the recording, and using facial recognition and movement analysis, they concluded something astonishing. The woman's physical features matched Isabella's proportions at that time, not an adult woman's. She had been disguised to look older, her face partially hidden. When Indonesian police searched the records of a nearby villa rented under Ramon's alias, they recovered a few personal items, a hairbrush, a toothbrush, and strands of hair that were sent for DNA testing. The results confirmed what Clara feared most. The DNA belonged to Isabella, proving she had been alive long after the supposed accident. But that revelation came with another horror. Blood traces found near the sailboat wreckage back in the Philippines were tested against global databases, and they matched Elena Morales. It meant Elena had never made it to Indonesia. Ramon had killed her before faking the boat accident, escaping with his daughter under new identities. Clara's heart shattered as the pieces fell together. The man she had loved had not died at sea. He had built a new life on a lie, one founded on betrayal, manipulation, and an unspeakable crime. Indonesian authorities, armed with the new DNA evidence, launched an international search that lasted months. Eventually, they found Ramon living under the name Ricardo Cruz in a quiet coastal village near Manado. He was a shadow of the man Clara once knew, his hair gray, his shoulders bent from years of labor, his face lined with guilt. He worked as a boat repairman, keeping to himself and avoiding questions about his past. When police arrived, he didn't resist. He simply looked at them with weary eyes, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. Isabella, now 21, was found nearby, teaching English to local children. She had grown into a quiet, reserved woman with no memory of her early childhood in the Philippines. To her, Ramon was her only family. She had been told her mother abandoned them, and the sea had taken everything else. When she learned the truth, she was inconsolable. Ramon was extradited to the Philippines, where he finally confessed. He admitted to meeting Elena a year before his disappearance and falling in love. They had planned to start a new life abroad using the money from the property he sold. But during their final trip, an argument turned violent, and in a moment of rage, he killed her. Terrified, he faked the boat wreck, took Isabella, and vanished. He lived the next 12 years running from his own guilt. Clara attended his trial but couldn't bring herself to speak. The man on the stand was no longer her husband, only a stranger shaped by lies. Ramon was sentenced to life in prison, while Isabella began therapy to rebuild her lost past. The truth had finally surfaced, but it brought no peace, only the haunting reminder that love, once twisted, can destroy everything.